Hi, my name's Bill Hall, and like you, I'm an avid sports fan. I filmed this video series to show you how you can profit from your passion for sports. Look, I'm not a professional actor. My day job is as a Wall Street investment manager, and I spend my time showing my clients how to allocate their assets all around the globe to maximize their money-making opportunities. And because I'm a sports fan, I developed a similar system using these same time-tested asset allocation principles so you can profit from your passion for sports just like my investment clients do. I think I've got a lot of really great information, some really good stuff to share with you in these videos. So if you're ready, let's jump right in and I'll explain how you can get in and win and make some money too. First off, sports are fun. I love watching sports in person and on television and thinking about all the great memories and the people I shared them with. Who could forget the Roger Staubach-led Dallas Cowboys battling Terry Bradshaw and the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 1970s, the dominance of Bill Walsh's 49ers in the 1980s, and just how great Tom Brady and the New England Patriots have been over the past decade. When I think about college basketball, I think about Jim Valvano's huge upset win over Houston in Phi Slamma Jamma to capture the NCAA championship in 1983. But then again, Villanova gave us a real thrill in their recent run to the College Basketball National Championship. In the NBA, it's Larry Bird's battles with Magic Johnson and the Los Angeles Lakers, which eventually gave way to Michael Jordan's great years. And now we've moved on to LeBron James, the Golden State Warriors, and Steph Curry. And in baseball, it's got to be the Boston Red Sox going at it with the New York Yankees in Fenway Park and at Yankee Stadium. Yes, sports are about having fun, but that doesn't fully explain our fascination with the games. There is something else going on here. And what that something else is that it's because sports are one of the few entertainment options where the outcome is truly unknown. Think about the movies. When you went to see Harry Potter, did you ever think that Harry would lose and the Dark Lord would ultimately prevail over the Order of the Phoenix? Of course you didn't. But in sports, the outcome is often a lot different than what we expect. That's because a sporting event is a real-life drama being played out right before our very eyes. As an example, let's look back at what happened in Super Bowl 49 when the Seattle Seahawks played the New England Patriots. The Seahawks were the defending NFL champions, and they were coming off a regular season where they had dominated almost everyone they had played. So here they are at the end of the Super Bowl. The Seahawks are down by only 4 points, and they're sitting on New England's 1-yard line with 6 seconds to go and 1 timeout in their back pocket. It was obvious that all the Seahawks had to do was hand the ball to all-pro running back Marshawn Lynch, and the Seahawks would be well on their way to back-to-back Super Bowl victories. But as we all know, that's not what happened. That's because Seahawks head coach Pete Carroll inexplicably decided to throw the ball instead of simply handing it to Lynch. And that's when the unexpected happened. That's when an undrafted, and until that moment, a largely unknown rookie cornerback named Malcolm Butler of the New England Patriots stepped in front of a Seahawks receiver and snatched an interception to give the Patriots a 28-24 victory. New England literally stole victory from the jaws of defeat. It was truly unbelievable and extraordinarily exciting. At least for Patriots fans, that is. And that's it. It's the fact that we don't know the final outcome of the games that attracts us to sports. We love all the drama. We love the stories about the players. And we love the intellectual challenge of trying to predict the ending or who's going to win the game. Yes, sports are fun, but as a professional investor and Wall Street money manager, I can tell you that sports can be about making money too. And that's my mission, to show you how you can get fully engaged in the games that you love and make money along with your favorite teams, players, and coaches. In these video sessions, I'm going to explain to you how to make money using the same time-tested investment principles that are practiced every day on Wall Street by the world's most successful investors. Right now, you're probably asking yourself, what do Wall Street and sports have in common, and how am I going to be able to make money using what's happening on Wall Street to make money on sports? Well, to begin with, both sports and Wall Street are about numbers. In my day job as a money manager, I see quotes on the web that look something like this. And when I click on my favorite sports sites, I see the sports betting lines for the upcoming games. They look like this. I admit that at first glance, these two things don't seem to have too much in common, other than numbers. One's a stock quote, and the other shows the sports betting lines. How further apart can two things be? And that's what I originally thought until one day it hit me. These two seemingly different things, a stock quote and a sports betting line, are actually the same thing. As an avid sports fan and an experienced financial analyst with tons of training in statistical analysis, I'm disappointed it took me so long to figure it out. How could I have not seen it? Frankly, I don't know what took so long. When I really think about it, I realize that making a decision about whether to buy a stock or not and assessing a sports betting line both involve the same elements: a forecast of the future and a determination of value. That's right, at their core, both investing and sports wagering share the same two common fundamental characteristics. One, a prediction about a future outcome, and two, a calculation of value. That's it. It reminds me of the famous quote from Edgar Allan Poe's The Purloined Letter. Yes, indeed, the similarities between the financial markets and sports wagering was hidden in plain sight, which is what kept me, like most people, from seeing it. Speaking in Wall Street terms, stocks, stock options, and sports betting lines are all contractual financial arrangements that require the assessment of the likely outcome of a future event and involve the exchange of money. Now that's a mouthful. Numbers nerds like me call this probability theory. The key here is that the price for all are determined by real money changing hands between willing buyers and willing sellers, each with different points of view. That's why I call them both, stock prices and betting lines, money-sanctioned opinions. What's a money-sanctioned opinion? Well, it's just a fancy way of saying putting your money where your mouth is. And that's what you do when you buy a stock or place a sports bet. You put your money down based on your opinion. Now, many of my colleagues in the investment management business, they don't want to hear this. That's because they view investment management as a privileged profession, and they look askance at sports betting. But then I ask them to think about it this way. I say, look, our clients pay us tons of money to predict future stock prices, and we've developed really sophisticated mathematical models to help us do that, right? And they sort of nod their heads in agreement. And then I say, don't you think if we can tell a client what they ought to pay for a stock, like Apple or Google, based on all the assumptions and all the analysis we have to do to get a stock price right, then forecasting the score of a game should be a lot easier, because there simply aren't as many variables. And then again, they sort of shake their heads, this time a bit grudgingly, in agreement, not really wanting to acknowledge that in the end, picking stocks involves the same analytical skills and judgment as deciding whether or not to place a sports bet. Having done both, I can tell you that picking the game winner, even against this point spread, is way easier than trying to beat someone at Goldman Sachs on a stock trade. I can't tell you how many times that I've walked out of a very proper, very sophisticated investment committee meeting where my firm is managing tens of millions of dollars, and one of the committee members stops me in the hall outside of the meeting room and asks me if I have a hot stock tip. When you really think about it, that's a silly question. First off, taking a chance on a single hot stock is way too risky, and it goes against all the principles of diversification and prudent investing. And number two, there's no way an individual investor can outtrade the big institutional firms like JP Morgan, Fidelity, Deutsche Bank, or Credit Suisse. You're simply overmatched and outgunned. So when they ask, I simply say, if you're a sports fan, your chances of placing a winning wager on the game tonight are a lot better than making a quick hit on a hot stock tip. Some get my point, and others, unfortunately, don't. Now, why is that? It's because here in the US, we seem to be confused about what wagering on sports really is. I call it the sports wagering paradox. If you think about it, why should investment management be viewed as a privileged profession? and sports wagering be viewed as gambling, when they're both essentially the same thing? Evaluating the odds and searching for value. That's right, it's indeed a real paradox. And here's another part of the paradox that you probably don't know about. Did you know that it's legal to bet on sports in England and that it's not in the US? As a matter of fact, it's legal across most of Europe. And it's not just the European sports, like soccer and cricket, that you can bet on. You can bet on US sports, the NFL, the NBA, college basketball, college football, and Major League Baseball. And not only do they have betting parlors on almost every corner that look like this one, you can also bet using your computer over the internet. In fact, they have in-stadium betting at soccer matches. Yes, you can bet in-stadium at premier soccer matches, which is their equivalent of our NFL. And these betting services are not provided by local bookies, but instead by well-respected, publicly traded financial companies. When you look at Europe, it's obvious that here in the US, we're way behind the curve when it comes to legalized sports wagering. But here's someone that's not behind the curve. This is NBA Commissioner Adam Silver. He's also a lawyer, and get this, he's a supporter of legalized and regulated sports betting because he thinks it adds to the fan experience. And you know what? He's right. In fact, he wrote an op-ed piece in the New York Times about legalizing it. And that's because Silver wants to promote the NBA globally. And he knows that sports betting is legal almost everywhere else in the world, except the US. He also knows that people all across Europe and Asia are already betting on the NBA without any negative impact on his league. Adam is a forward thinker. He gets it. On the other hand, here's an organization that's confused about its stance on sports betting, and that's the NCAA. Publicly, they say they oppose it, yet they allow Las Vegas, the heart of sports betting in the US, to host both the Pac-12 and Mountain West postseason college basketball tournaments. On top of that, Las Vegas also plays host to the Las Vegas Invitational, which is one of the premier Thanksgiving week college basketball tournaments that's heavily promoted by all the big media outlets. And if that's not enough, Las Vegas, with, get this, the NCAA's backing, just added the Vegas 16 to its tournament list. The Vegas 16 is an NCAA-sanctioned postseason college basketball tournament for teams that just missed the cut for March Madness's official field of 64. Now here's an ad for the Pac-12 tournament, which required NCAA approval. Look at the tagline. What happens here makes the highlight reel, which is obviously a play on the well-known Las Vegas promo line. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. But then the NCAA also publishes statements like this. Really, NCAA? This looks more than a bit disingenuous to me and smacks of saying one thing and doing another. Now let's move on to another organization, and that's ESPN. Despite sports wagering being illegal in most of the US, and I'll go over what's legal and what's not in the US here in a few minutes, ESPN has a live odds section prominently displayed on its website. Here's what it looks like. What this is a comparison of the betting lines available on an NFL game, mostly over the internet, from 4 major offshore sports books: BetOnline, 5 Dimes, Sports Betting AG, and Bovada. The 5th, Westgate, is in Las Vegas. This is obviously the equivalent of comparison shopping, which means find the best price on the bet you are looking to place, and it's just one click away. This seems a lot like bet brokering to me, because each of these sports books is probably already a major advertiser or a prospect to be a major advertiser with ESPN through one of ESPN's international affiliates. And here's the real kicker. The U.S. Department of Justice has taken the position that each of these offshore sports books are operating illegally in the U.S., even though they are operating legally in their own countries. Maybe the DOJ should give Mickey Mouse and the Walt Disney Company a call to see why their largest subsidiary, ESPN, is actively promoting illegal offshore sports betting. And this is my final example of the big sports wagering paradox, and then we'll move on. I save it for last because as a reputable financial professional that's been on Wall Street for many years, it's the one that really gets me. Why does it bother me so much? It's because on one hand, we have legislators and regulators here in the U.S. taking the stance that sports betting is a dangerous activity that should be banned because of the potential harm it could cause to obsessive bettors. But on the other hand, we have well-known financial services firms like E-Trade, Ameritrade, and Charles Schwab aggressively promoting their online trading platforms to the general public. These trading platforms go by catchy names like Pro Elite, Thinkorswim, Trade Architect. They blast out slogans like, "Trade like the pros do." I can tell you from firsthand experience that this is a bunch of hogwash. It's just not true. Worse yet, it's really dangerous. Yes, it's really dangerous. That's because sitting at home and shorting interest rate and currency futures from your kitchen table is absolutely crazy and can be way more devastating to your financial well-being than making a few sports bets. And look at who's an official sponsor of Trade Architect. It's the NFL. Roger Goodell and his crew say they don't want you betting on their games, but it's okay to blow up your 401k savings with just a few misplaced options trades. It makes absolutely no sense. That's because inexperienced investors are unknowingly just a few mouse clicks away from blowing away their entire life savings when trading leveraged options and ETFs. On the other hand, sportsbooks have a maximum bet amount. Let's say $200, $500, maybe up to $5,000, and there's no leverage allowed. That means there's a limit on how much you can lose when betting on sports. But there are no limits with most ETFs and options trades. And worse yet, you can leverage them at 3 or 4 to 1. That means look out below if you're trading these securities. And here's the big headline for you. That's why sports betting is a winnable game for the average person. It's because the big boys like hedge funds and institutional investors, they don't play. And that's because they can't make enough big bets to make it worth their time. That's why an individual sports fan like you that approaches sports betting in a business-like way can get an edge. And this is why you and I want the sports wagering paradox to continue. It keeps the big boys out and gives the rest of us a chance. I'll come back to this and explain it in a lot more detail in just a second. But for now, what you need to know is that trading is a loser's game and can be dangerous to your financial well-being. What's more, it's my view that our regulators here in the U.S. should be coming down harder on financial services firms that are falsely promoting quick trading riches instead of spending their limited resources trying to close down sports books that are operating legally in their own countries. Okay, that's enough about the paradox. I think you get my point. Now let's dive into why sports betting is indeed a winnable game, and then we'll talk in general terms about what's legal and what's not here in the U.S. Here's the question everyone asks me about sports betting, and that's, why is sports betting a winnable game for the everyday sports fan? And the answer is, it's because of two primary reasons. There are a lot of casual and uninformed bettors that are just wagering for fun, trying to get some action on their favorite players or teams. These people simply aren't thinking about wagering in a business-like way, so their money is just sitting there, waiting to be taken. Number two, because of regulatory and legal restrictions, the sports betting markets aren't very deep or liquid. What I mean by this is that you can't bet in amounts large enough to attract institutional or professional investment capital. In simple terms, what I'm saying is that bet amounts are capped. As I said before, at let's say $5,000. Large professional investors want to trade in minimum increments of at least $500,000. And even $500,000 is considered a small trade in the institutional world. So an institutional investor can't make enough $5,000 bets to earn a meaningful profit. Otherwise, someone would already be operating a successful sports betting hedge fund in, let's say, Europe, where sports betting is legal and access to capital is easy. So while it may seem counterintuitive, this is good news for you, the passionate, everyday fan that wants to make money betting on sports. That's because, as I said before, and I know I'm repeating myself, but this is important. It's because of the betting limits at the sports books that keep the big boys out, because they can't deploy enough capital to make it worth their time. But on the other hand, there's plenty of money, really good money, as I'll show you in the next module, that you can make as an individual sports bettor. But to really cash in, you have to approach sports betting in a business-like way and be systematic and disciplined in your approach. And that's my goal, to give you the tools and strategies to put the odds squarely on your side so you can profit from your passion for sports. And that's what we're going to do in these sessions. I'm going to show you winning strategies and forecasting models that are based on a combination of time-tested investment principles and cutting-edge sports analytical methods so you can make money just like your favorite players and coaches do. Think of it as Warren Buffett, the iconic investor, meets Billy Beane and Moneyball. And the result is the business like better. Now let's take a minute to review what the sports betting regulatory environment looks like in the US. But here's where I need to make an important disclaimer. I'm not a lawyer and I'm not giving you legal advice. What I'm going to tell you is based on my general understanding of how the laws work. If you want a definitive legal opinion, I advise you to contact a lawyer. Here's the first thing you need to know. Sports betting is illegal in the United States, everywhere except in Nevada. That means it's illegal to take a sports bet or place a sports bet anywhere in the US unless you are physically, meaning your human body is located in Nevada. It's also illegal to accept or place a sports bet over the internet using your computer from anywhere in the US. Of course, as I just showed you, this hasn't stopped some internet sportsbooks that are operating legally in their own countries from offering their services to people in the US. And as I just showed you, it hasn't stopped ESPN from actively promoting these activities on their website. Now, on the other hand, it is okay to bet from your computer if you and your computer are outside the US in a place where sports betting is allowed, which is most of Europe, Australia, Canada, the Caribbean, and most of Asia. And when US authorities do crack down on sports betting, in the past, they've generally gone after the sports books and bookmakers, not their customers. Look, I personally don't make illegal sports wagers, and I am not advising you to do so. Again, if you need more, I suggest you contact a lawyer that specializes in this area. While we were on the topic of what's legal and what's not as it relates to sports betting, let's talk a bit about daily fantasy sports. There's been a lot going on recently in the world of fantasy sports as to whether it's legal or not. The bottom line is that no one knows for sure. What we do know is that there has been a meteoric rise in the popularity of daily fantasy sports websites, such as DraftKings and FanDuel, which has been truly incredible. If you've been watching sports on TV or looking at your favorite sports website, I'm sure you've seen their ads splashed on seemingly every screen. That's because daily fantasy sports has become big business, with the leading companies racing to do deals with all the professional teams, while at the same time attaining billion-dollar market valuations from prominent investors. Indeed, FanDuel has said that Major League Baseball, the NBA, and public companies such as Comcast, Time Warner, and Google are among its investors. And nearly every NFL team has a sponsorship deal with DraftKings or FanDuel. And two powerful NFL owners, Jerry Jones of the Dallas Cowboys and Robert Kraft of the New England Patriots, have said they have equity stakes in these two companies. But the current explosion in the popularity of daily fantasy sports has also caught the eye of regulators and government officials across the country. In fact, New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman has led the charge, and he's seeking an injunction to shut down the daily fantasy sites operating in his state. That's because he believes that daily fantasy is indeed gambling under New York state law. Since Schneiderman's suit, DraftKings and FanDuel, along with the entire daily fantasy industry, has faced a firestorm of legal challenges, including a flurry of civil lawsuits from customers that claim to have been ripped off, a grand jury indictment in Florida, possible regulation in several states, including Nevada, an FBI probe, and even a Justice Department inquiry. All in all, the daily fantasy industry is involved in a big, big mess. No matter how all of this is eventually resolved, the regulation of the daily fantasy industry has become a big deal for government officials. The turmoil around the legality of daily fantasy sports contests will, in my opinion, drag on for many years, and it probably ends in a way that resembles a regulated state lottery system. The bottom line is that this is a murky area of the law, and for daily fantasy players, this means a lot of uncertainty for a long period of time. Okay, let's get back to the business like better. As I said before, the fact that sports wagering is not perceived as a true financial market is what makes it easier to make money in sports wagering than in the real financial markets. That's why the informed player who conducts himself in a business-like manner has an advantage over the other players in a way that cannot be duplicated in the financial markets. Well, it may not seem like it, and I'll explain why in an upcoming module. You are really competing against the other bettors, not the sports book when wagering on sports. And it is precisely for this reason that your biggest single ally in sports wagering is the overall mediocrity and uninformed actions of casual sports fans. Okay, let's compare sports wagering to trading in the financial markets. Large institutions and full-time professionals dominate these markets. These investment professionals have way more information and have done far more extensive research than the general investing public. They are experts in the companies whose financial instruments they trade and the markets in which the transactions are executed. The success of their organizations and even their own paychecks are completely dependent on the results of their trading activities. This is why in the financial markets, it's virtually impossible for an individual investor to consistently outperform the professionals over any extended period of time. By contrast, a lot of sports wagers are placed by individuals that think about sports betting as entertainment and not a business. They do it because it's fun to bet on the home team or because they got a hot tip from a friend. If they win, it's found money. If they lose, they've still enjoyed having some action on the game. Think of it this way. As you know, there's loads of information out there about every professional sports team. Information on each game, each player, and all types of cumulative statistics can be easily obtained from the web and other sources. And here's where you have your advantage. That's because casual sports fans don't spend much time interpreting or have a fundamentally sound process to systematically evaluate all this information. They simply look at the headlines or a few popular rating systems and bet their gut. That's what makes it possible for those who are serious about sports and have the right analytical tools to gain what is called an informational advantage over the general sports betting public. Now compare this with your ability to analyze a publicly traded company. Just like with sports stats, all investors have access to the same information and the disclosures required by the Securities and Exchange Commission. But the major institutions and research organizations spend millions of dollars and employ armies of analysts to gather even more information so they can go beyond what's publicly available. I'm not talking about illegal inside information, but instead about good old-fashioned, nitty-gritty, grinded-out fundamental research. That's why in the financial markets, it just isn't likely that you'll be able to gain an informational advantage over Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Merrill Lynch, or Fidelity. Imagine if a Wall Street portfolio manager ignored company earnings reports and analyst recommendations and simply bought stocks based on some gut feeling. Not many people would put their 401k savings into, let's say, the Vanguard Gut Feeling Fund, but that's how billions of dollars are wagered on sports every year. And that's why you have an informational advantage when betting on sports. Look, I'm here to tell you that betting on sports and winning consistently does not require a stratospheric IQ, abnormally keen insights, an Ivy League education, or inside information. However, what you do need, what you must have, is a sound analytical framework so that you can approach sports wagering in a business-like manner and prevent emotion from creeping into the process. And that's precisely why I created my Get In and Win sports wagering system. I did it by incorporating the same time-tested business principles and valuation techniques used by the most successful Wall Street traders. The Get In and Win analytics will reveal all the information you'll need to make winning sports bets. By following the easy-to-understand and easily applied Get In and Win methods, you'll have all the potential to make serious money. The amount of money you will ultimately make will depend on the effort and intellect you apply to the sports wagering process. What's more irrational the behavior of the other bettors, the greater the opportunity for you, the business-like bettor, to make money. And as you and I go through the Get In and Win system together, you'll learn the real-world tactics you'll need to succeed. And just as important, you'll also learn the game plans to avoid from Amateur Andy, Louie the Loser, Frank the Fan, Streaking Steve, and Last Chance Vance. Using Get In and Win, I'll explain how to use my proprietary system to place winning bets by compiling scorecards, value ratings, and score sheets, all of which are based on proven investment practices that reveal the winning sports information that's hidden in plain sight. You'll learn the importance of a margin of safety and win rates, how to recognize hidden treasures, and how to construct a money management game plan to safeguard your winnings and avoid risk. And then you'll meet Sammy Swish and Arnold Airball, who will teach you about the psychology associated with winning and losing streaks, and the mindset you'll need to get through them. And when you're done, you'll be fully prepared to get in the game and make big profits over the long term. Having spent more than 30 years on Wall Street, I can tell you that possessing a sound process for obtaining useful information, knowing which tools to use for each job, and having the necessary experience, knowledge, and judgment are all attributes that you need to be a successful investor. Sports wagering is no different. You won't win all the time using Get In and Win. That's unrealistic, and no one does. But you'll learn a disciplined and systematic approach so that you'll win far more often than you lose. My aim is to show you how to bet smart and to bet only when value and the odds are squarely on your side. Thank you for joining me on this first step in your journey to learn how to profit from your passion for sports. I look forward to seeing you again for Module 2, where we'll talk about the essentials for turning your love of sports into a compound money machine. Until then, good luck, have fun, and may the odds be with you.